They called me a disgrace to my face, right in front of the whole family. And in that same breath, they tried to erase everything my mother left for me. Hi, I'm Dell. For years, I was the quiet one, the afterthought. The girl they expected to stay silent while my sister rewrote our family story. But what if the black sheep has receipts? What would you do if you found out your own blood had forged your name to steal everything you loved? Would you walk away or fight back, even if it meant standing alone? Drop your thoughts below. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and defending what's rightfully yours? Let's jump back to the day I walked into that while reading and the real family drama exploded. Did she just call me a disgrace in front of the entire family? The words hung in the air like sour perfume, too thick to ignore, too sharp to swallow. I sat frozen at the edge of the long linen-draped table in the grand dining room of the Morris estate, hands folded neatly in my lap, as every eye turned to me. Some were sympathetic, most were smug, and one, hers, was triumphant. Clarissa Morris, my older sister by 3 years and 3 lifetimes of self-importance, raised her glass in mock solemnity. To those of us who stayed loyal, she said, pausing just long enough for effect, and to those who, well, embarrassed us along the way. Laughter fluttered around the table, thin, nervous, obedient. I didn't respond. I hadn't since I walked through the front door of this gilded mausoleum they still called home. My fingers gripped the embroidered edge of a handkerchief tucked into my palm, the one Mom had sewn for me when I was 13. Yen stitched in faded blue thread. Evelyn Morris, the only person who ever really saw me in this house full of performances. Clarissa sipped from her crystal flute, then placed it down with surgical precision. Some people leave behind more than just shame, she said, her smile wide and deliberate. Sometimes they leave legal messes. But let's hope today's process is clean. A flicker in my chest pulled me briefly away. My eyes found the ivory frame on the fireplace mantel, Mom's favorite photo from when we were kids, both in Sunday dresses, holding the same flower. I remembered the funeral 2 weeks ago. Clarissa at the pulpit, commanding the room with rehearsed grief, cutting me off when I tried to approach the podium. I'd written a short poem. I never got to read it. Later, when I stepped forward during the private viewing to place a folded note in Mom's hands, a man in a black suit gently stepped in front of me. "Sorry, family only," he said. "I am family," I whispered. He didn't move. That moment stayed lodged under my skin, like a splinter that wouldn't heal. I didn't try again. Mr. Whitlock cleared his throat. The family's attorney, who looked like he'd rather be buried than preside over the spectacle, stood at the head of the table and adjusted his glasses. "Before we proceed, I need to confirm official presence for the record." A clipboard was passed around. I was the only one asked to sign. Clarissa smirked. "Oh, special treatment." I met her gaze and said nothing. Let her think silence was surrender. It always made the fall louder. Mr. Whitlock retrieved the clipboard, returned to his briefcase, and removed the final document. The will. He unfolded it with slow, deliberate hands, as if each crease mattered. "The last will and testament of Evelyn Morris," he began. "The entirety of the Morris estate, including properties, residual assets, and controlling shares, are left solely to Miss Odeline Morris." For a second, the air left the room. A glass shattered. My cousin gasped. Clarissa's chair scraped loudly as she lurched to her feet. "What the hell is this?" "She manipulated Mom. This is fraud. Everyone knows she wasn't even here the last few years." "She was," Aunt Beatrice said quietly, but no one seemed to hear her. Mr. Whitlock didn't flinch. This document was signed and notarized, witnessed by 2 staff members, both of whom verified Ms. Morris's full cognitive capacity. Clarissa's face flushed, a blotchy mix of red and disbelief. You all seriously believe this? She showed up near the end and guilt her way into everything. She made Mom feel bad, played nurse when the cameras were off. She marched to Mr. Whitlock's end of the table, yanking the document from his hands and holding it up like a prop in a courtroom. This is a lie. Look at this signature. It's shaky. She was on medication. Dell must have convinced her. When she was confused, Mr. Whitlock kept his tone professional. Ms. Morris, please compose yourself. The signing took place in your presence. You gave verbal consent. Clarissa turned her fury toward me. You think this is justice? You think walking in here with your sad little scarf and that envelope gives you power? I stood slowly. The room quieted as I placed my hand gently on the back of my chair. If you'd let Mom speak instead of silencing her, I said calmly, maybe you'd know why. I didn't wait for a retort. I didn't need one. Mr. Whitlock walked over and handed me a sealed envelope, thicker than it should have been. For the one they never saw coming, it read in Mom's handwriting. The moment swallowed the room whole. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. As I sat down, I caught sight of my nephew, Clarissa's son, stealing a cookie and hiding it in his napkin. For a moment, I saw myself at that age, always hiding, always hungry for something I wasn't allowed to reach for. Behind me, someone whispered, I thought she was broke. Clarissa tugged at her sleeve, just enough to obscure the luxury watch glinting on her wrist. The same one she claimed was a family heirloom when Mom asked about it last Christmas. A phone rang from the hallway, a landline. We all turned. No one moved. Mr. Whitlock stepped out to answer, then returned and leaned toward me. It's for you. My brow furrowed. Who is it? He hesitated, then spoke low enough only for me to hear. David Elston. He says he heard you're the new owner, and he needs to talk. You're telling me their biggest client just requested a one-on-one lunch with me? I repeated the words as I stood in the quiet hallway outside my kitchen, the phone still warm in my hand. The disbelief hadn't settled yet, not even after I'd checked the call log 3 times. David Elston, Clarissa's crown jewel. Her living proof to the family that she was important in all the ways I wasn't. But he hadn't called her. He asked for me. The memory of that tense dinner 3 months ago flared in my mind. Clarissa sat at the head of the long mahogany table, wine glass in hand, glowing under chandelier light. Elston is close to finalizing, she'd bragged, tapping her nails on the rim of her glass. If this deal closes, we'll be aligned with every major trust fund circle in the Southeast. I was serving dessert. No one asked my opinion. No one even looked up. Until now. 2 days later, I stood outside Belvoir, a French bistro nestled between glass office towers downtown Charleston. I hadn't even stepped through the door before the hostess greeted me with, Ms. Morris, welcome. Right this way. Ms. Morris. For once, they didn't mean her. The restaurant was elegant, hushed, the air tinged with lemon butter and candle wax. Waitstaff floated like ghosts between white linen tables, and the piano in the corner played something soft and expensive, violin drifting lightly under the soft clinking of silverware. David Elston was already seated in a corner booth. Navy suit, no tie. Understated power. He stood and extended a hand. They told me you wouldn't show, he said. But you hoped I would, I finished, sliding into the seat across from him. He nodded. Your sister was quite emphatic about speaking on behalf of the estate. But after what I heard at the will reading, I thought perhaps that authority had shifted. I'm still catching up, I admitted. Then let's catch up together. He waved off the menus and reached for his leather briefcase. This, he said, sliding a folder toward me, is the contract Clarissa submitted. Take a look at line 14. I scanned it, and froze. Oh, Morris, 5% equity transfer. Signature required. My throat went dry. That's not my signature. I know, David said, calm as ever. That's why we're here. I picked up the wine glass set in front of me, mostly to steady my hand. The stem trembled slightly between my fingers. David glanced at the waiter and gave a subtle nod. The wine was quietly replaced with sparkling water. I don't do business with families that lie, he said. You're the legal heir now. So the deal is with you. Or not at all. If I'm in charge, I said slowly, it'll be clean, transparent. No hidden clauses. No fake signatures. He smiled, just barely. That's all I needed to hear. He pulled out a new draft contract and a slim silver pen. I signed. His expression didn't shift, but I caught the smallest glint of satisfaction in his eyes as he crossed out Clarissa's name on the original proposal in one bold stroke. She won't take this lightly, I said. She never does, he replied, then stood. My assistant will get you the revised documents. A composed black woman, mid-60s, silver-streaked hair, steel in her spine, approached the table. She handed me a manila folder. He said you'd want to see how deep this goes. Inside were printed email threads, time-stamped, internal. I stopped at one from Clarissa. She's too naive to catch this. I've handled the paperwork. Just move forward. I closed the folder. The assistant lingered just a moment longer, then leaned in and said quietly, You don't owe anyone an apology for showing up. Her voice was calm, but it landed like a hand on my shoulder. As I walked out, the late afternoon sun hit different, warm light catching the glass entrance behind me. I could almost picture a camera pulling back, watching me walk out alone, upright, my shadow dissolving into the brightness. My phone buzzed in my bag. Clarissa. Again. 7 missed calls. I didn't answer. The cab ride home felt oddly serene, the city passing by in a blur of gold and blue. At a red light, I checked my phone. Clarissa had left a string of texts, each one more frantic than the last. Pick up the phone, Del. You can't do this. Don't sign anything. Let's talk. Then a voicemail, her voice sharp, then trembling. You're making a mistake. Mom wouldn't have wanted this to go public. Don't embarrass the family more than you already have. I listened, hit delete, and tucked the phone away. For the first time, her threats didn't touch me. Have you ever realized that the people closest to you could hurt you the most, especially when all you wanted was a little respect? If you've ever been betrayed or dismissed by your own family, leave a comment number 7 below. Let's see what happened when I finally decided not to be silent. Back home, twilight had fallen. I stepped onto the porch, the wood still warm from the day's heat, and opened the mailbox. Flyers. Bills. One stiff white envelope with a seal I recognized too well. I opened it under the porch light. Notice of civil action. Petitioner, Clarissa Morris. Grounds, undue influence, mental incapacity of deceased. For a moment, I sat on the steps, envelope in hand, breathing in the night air and porch light. A memory surfaced, warm as summer dusk, Mom's voice one night years ago, tired but firm. No matter how loud they get, no one gets to decide your worth but you. Not even me. I closed my eyes, steady now. When I opened them, I felt a quiet certainty where fear used to be. Of course, she sued me. And this time, I wasn't just ready. I was armed. You forged my name, Clarissa. You actually forged my name. The words echoed in my head as I stared at the familiar loops and slants of the signature, my own name, twisted and foreign in a script I recognized but didn't write. The evidence was right there in the folder David Elston had handed me. And now, As the morning sun flared through the glass walls of Morris Legacy Partners, it was my turn to end the silence. Before I stepped into the boardroom, a memory clawed its way to the surface. Last year, an email from Mom, a bland subject line, "Please review and sign." Clarissa hovered at my shoulder, all false warmth. "Just sign it, Dell. It's nothing. Legal housekeeping." I'd paused, asked about the lawyer's missing initials. She rolled her eyes. So dramatic. I'd refused. That stubborn instinct, brushed aside for years, was the only thing standing between me and disaster now. That and the truth. The boardroom was a box of sunlight and glass, the city humming far below. Clarissa stood at the head of the table, black folder in hand, voice butter smooth. "Ladies and gentlemen, as you'll see in the briefing, we've moved swiftly to secure the Elston contract. All documentation has been finalized, with the full support of the estate's legal representative." She smiled, practiced, and perfect. "As the designated executor, I have ensured full transparency with my sister's cooperation." David Elston sat to her left, inscrutable. He gave a tiny wave. "Let her finish," the gesture said. I caught the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. He already knew. I pushed back my chair and stood. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I'd burned through fear. Now there was only focus. "I'd like to clarify something," I said, projecting my voice across the table. "This document," I slid the contract David had given me into the center, "contains a signature that looks like mine. But it isn't. That is not my hand." The room grew still. Lana Ortega, my new attorney, stood up beside me, her voice cool and even. "Forgery under estate law, Section 73. This document is criminal." Clarissa's smile froze. She laughed, brittle. "That's ridiculous." She probably forgot she signed it. "We've been handling a lot these days." I looked her straight in the eye. "I forget a lot, Clarissa. But not when you try to steal from me. You crossed a line." A board member, silver-haired and tight-lipped, cleared his throat. "Is this the first time something like this has happened?" I didn't flinch. I slid another page forward. A printed email from Mom. Her words, scrawled in worry. "Dell, don't sign anything without review. I don't trust your sister anymore." Clarissa tried to grab the paper, but Lana's hand landed on it first, nails tapping softly. The silence thickened. David finally spoke, his voice calm and hard as marble. "From now on, our contracts are with Odeline Morris only." For a moment, no one moved. Then, in a single, definitive motion, David slid the entire project folder across the table toward me. "Ms. Morris, your signature, please." The click of my pen filled the room. As I finished, Clarissa let out a strangled sound, then shrieked, "You don't know what you're doing. This is sabotage." I stood, gathering my notes, meeting her glare head-on. "No. This is accountability. Something you've avoided your whole life." Clarissa's hands shook as she reached for her bag, and in the awkward silence that followed, her expensive briefcase toppled to the floor, scattering papers. No one rushed to help. The meeting ended with a whimper, not a bang. The board shuffled out, eyes avoiding Clarissa's. David shook my hand, his grip firm and respectful. As I left the room, Clarissa caught up, her voice low and venomous. "You think you've won? Court will eat you alive." I didn't answer. Lana lingered behind, offering a small smile as she pressed a mint into my palm. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. "And you did it your way." I found myself outside on the executive balcony, the city sprawling in every direction. The afternoon sun hit the skyline, scattering gold across the glass and steel. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged here, like the story written on these streets had space for my name. Later that day, as Lana and I reviewed documents in her office, her phone chimed. She glanced at the screen, her face tightening. She filed. She's suing in probate court, 3 charges: undue influence, false inheritance claim, misappropriation of assets. They've set a hearing date. I let out a long breath, steeling myself for the next war. Clarissa might own the drama, but I owned the truth. And this time, the world would hear it. If they think I'll fall apart on the stand, they've clearly forgotten who raised me. The fluorescent lights in the deposition room buzzed faintly overhead, casting everyone in a hard, clinical glow. It was the sort of place built for discomfort. Glass walls, a long table, a row of cameras blinking red from the corners. I kept my hands folded neatly in front of me, refusing to let them see a single tremor. Even now, with Lana beside me and the weight of evidence in my bag, I couldn't help but remember a scene from the hospital the year before. Mom, frail and struggling for breath, hooked up to machines. Clarissa standing by her bed with her iPad, moving through documents in rapid-fire swipes. "What are you doing?" I'd asked, voice thin. Clarissa flashed a cold, dismissive smile. "Making things easier for everyone. Mom doesn't need to stress over estate logistics." Then she'd shooed the nurse away, and the air in the room turned cold and sharp. I'd never forgotten that moment. Now, in the courthouse conference room, Clarissa sat on the other side of the table in a pale blue suit, posture perfect. Her expression was serene, but her eyes darted to every camera lens. She was playing a part, as always. Lawyer Craig Elbier, hired by Clarissa, opened the session. "Thank you all for being here. As this is an evidentiary deposition, all answers are under oath and on record." Clarissa leaned slightly forward, hands folded, voice soft. "I only ever tried to protect my mother from manipulation. My sister and I, we had our differences, but I was always there for Mom." Craig gave her a supportive nod and began with gentle, seemingly harmless questions. "Would you say your sister showed up rather late in your mother's life?" The words were a trap dressed as sympathy. Clarissa glanced at me, then sighed, almost regretful. "Odeline came home when things were already bad. I wish she'd been more involved sooner." Now it was my turn. Craig pivoted. "Ms. Morris, was your mother of sound mind when she changed her will?" Lana's voice was crisp. "Objection. Asked and answered. Documentation is provided." But Craig pressed on, his smile tight. "We're just clarifying for the record. Did your mother ever hallucinate? Was she confused? Did she speak coherently in those last days?" I didn't blink. My mother was tired, not confused. She knew exactly who she could trust. I reached into my bag and withdrew a sheet of paper, the letter from Mom I'd kept in a plastic sleeve. I handed it to the clerk, who slid it to the judge. The ink was shaky but clear, every word legible. "I'm not confused, just tired and disappointed in Clarissa." Dated, signed in full, witnessed by the hospice administrator. A hush fell over the room. Even Craig Elbier's voice wavered as he continued. But before he could regroup, the judge nodded to the bailiff. "We have a late witness request." The doors opened, and in walked Gloria Haynes, night nurse. Her navy scrubs pressed, name badge gleaming. Night nurse G. Haynes. She walked slowly but purposefully, the light from the window hitting her like a spotlight. For a moment, Clarissa's face went white. Gloria settled into the witness seat. The judge's voice was gentle. "Miss Haynes, did you observe anything relevant to this matter?" Gloria folded her hands. "I was present the night Mrs. Morris was asked to sign over utilities and insurance." Clarissa waved a checkbook at her mother, raised her voice, and pressured her to sign. Mrs. Morris said she wanted to wait for her other daughter. Clarissa's lips pressed together, fighting to keep her mask on. Lana pulled up a video file on her laptop, tilting the screen so the cameras could capture. This is a recording from Mrs. Morris's care aide, the morning after the incident. The room stilled. On screen, my mother, pale but lucid, sat up in bed and spoke clearly. I don't want to be moved. I don't want to be sold off. This is my home. Clarissa exploded, voice pitched high. That doesn't prove anything. She was scared. She didn't know what she was saying. I stood, turning slowly to face the panel. My voice was steady, every syllable deliberate. She knew enough to be afraid of you. Lana reached into her folder and handed over a psychiatric evaluation signed by the hospice psychiatrist. Cognitive clarity confirmed within 90%. Fit to make legal decisions. A long pause. The judge looked at Clarissa. For the first time, she turned her face away from the cameras, her shoulders curling inward, completely exposed. The judge cleared his throat. There will be a formal hearing. All written and video evidence will be submitted into the public record. Ms. Morris, you are instructed not to contact witnesses until after the hearing. Clarissa grabbed her phone and swept out of the room. As the door swung shut behind her, she whispered harshly into her phone. We need to get ahead of this.
Press. Spin it now.
I don't care how. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. As people filed out, I lingered. Gloria approached quietly, pressing a folded, worn piece of cloth into my hand, a piece of the towel she'd used to wipe away Mom's tears. She loved you, Gloria said softly. Don't ever doubt that. I nodded, my eyes prickling, but I held it together. As Lana packed up, I glanced at the recording light on the far camera and murmured to myself, this time, I want them to see everything. On the way out, I caught Clarissa trying to interject, her voice shrill. Objection, but the judge raised a hand, shutting her down with a single motion. She froze, her authority gone, and for the first time, she looked truly small. The sunlight in the hall felt warmer than it should, as if it belonged to someone starting over. She weaponized the media, so I gave the truth a microphone. Some stories begin with a secret. Ours began with a stage. I still remember the first time I watched Clarissa perform for the cameras, a feature in Low Country Living, her smile so dazzling it hurt to look at. She sat among bouquets and certificates, talking about honoring Mom's legacy, while I, the actual caretaker, stood just out of frame, forgotten and invisible. That was years ago. Back then, I thought the only way to survive was to stay silent. I was wrong. Now, the stakes were higher and Clarissa was back on the air, the studio bathed in warm gold, a vase of lilies at her side. She dabbed a tissue at her eyes as the host leaned in. You've been through so much. How are you holding up? Clarissa pressed trembling fingers to her lips. It's just my sister wasn't there when it mattered. I had to carry everything, but I still hope the truth comes out. Her voice broke perfectly on cue. On screen, the hashtag Justice for Clarissa flashed. Sympathy, retweets, a river of hearts and teardrop emojis. She played the part of the wounded daughter flawlessly. Meanwhile, I sat at my kitchen table, watching the live feed, jaw clenched. My phone buzzed, an email from Monica Quinn, a reporter known for her measured tone and tough questions. We'd love to have your response, Monica wrote. It's only fair. I hovered over the reply button, then closed my laptop. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to stay out of the mud. But Clarissa was rewriting history, turning pain into spectacle. That night, the phone rang. David Elston's voice was low, certain. Time to stop being quiet, Odeline. You don't have to play their game. Just tell the truth.
Document it.
His call lingered in my mind. The next morning, I wrote Monica back. I'll do it. But we don't dramatize, we document. 2 days later, I arrived at Elston's law office, where the interview would be filmed. The space was stark, white walls, hard-backed chairs, sunlight harsh on the table. No makeup artist. No sympathetic lighting. Just documents spread between us, emails, financial records, and one battered recorder. Monica greeted me with a measured smile. Whenever you're ready, Odeline. My hands felt steady as I pressed play on the recorder. My mother's voice crackled through the speakers. I changed the will because Clarissa lied. Odeline is the only one who listened. Silence swept through the room. Even the cameraman glanced up, eyes wide. Monica leaned forward, her journalistic veneer slipping. Why speak now, after so much silence? I met her gaze. Because silence helped them rewrite history. I'm done letting them. Have you ever been pushed to the point where silence is no longer an option, and you knew you had to speak up, no matter the risk? If you've ever had to defend your truth in front of everyone, comment number 9 below. Now let's see how that moment changed everything. The questions that followed weren't soft. Monica pressed about money, about family feuds, about the years when Clarissa ran the show. I answered each, backing up every word with emails, bank statements, and Mom's handwritten notes. Midway through, the door opened. David Elston walked in unannounced. He spoke directly into the lens. Our firm received multiple forged documents from Clarissa Morris. We severed all agreements. We only trust Odeline with the legacy. The atmosphere in the room changed. Monica's posture shifted, her tone sharpened. On the live stream, the tide turned. Hashtags scrolled across the split screen. Hashtag stand with Dell. Hashtag let her speak. Hashtag truth over PR. Viewers bombarded the chat with questions, many apologizing for ever believing Clarissa's version. At the climax, Monica held up the folder I'd provided. Receipts for Clarissa's spending, designer bags, spa weekends, hotel bookings, all paid from Mom's accounts while she lay in hospice. Clarissa's signature confirmed every charge. She didn't just steal money, I said, voice clear, unwavering. She tried to steal my mother's voice, but I still have it. I reached for the tablet and cued the last video. Mom, thin but fierce, spoke straight into the camera. If you're hearing this, Clarissa failed again. The studio went quiet. The comments section exploded. Then, live, a call came into the show's hotline. Clarissa's voice, shrill and desperate. You edited this. This is all lies. Monica's reply was cold steel. You're welcome to join us in studio with your receipts. Clarissa's line cut. 30 minutes later, Monica received notice from Clarissa's attorney. All public statements were being withdrawn. There was no basis for further rebuttal. The aftermath was instant. The network ran a split-screen replay, Clarissa's teary narrative beside my mother's video confession. The color temperature shifted from golden sympathy to hard, clean daylight. David put his hand on my shoulder before leaving. You did what she never could. You forced them to see. As the crew packed up, Monica caught my eye. Thank you. That wasn't just a rebuttal. That was a reckoning. Back home, I sat on the couch with Romy. She'd watched the whole thing, eyes red-rimmed but shining. When I said nothing, she just nodded, squeezing my hand. Out the window, notifications buzzed as messages and hashtags flooded in, a public turning of the tide. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. They built legacies on lies. I built mine on what they tried to bury. Late summer sun poured through the magnolia trees, painting the porch in gold and shadow. I pushed open the screen door and stepped onto the old wooden boards. No heels, no suit, no mask. For the first time since all this began, I didn't feel the need to brace myself. There was nothing left to fight. On the porch swing, the same one Mom used every morning, I sat and listened to the distant hum of cicadas and the faint clink of wind chimes. My palm smoothed the worn fabric of her favorite handkerchief, initials faded, threads loose. Beside me, a sealed envelope. The last letter I'd never dared open. I looked out at the yard, sunlight streaking through the jasmine. In the kitchen, I heard Romy moving quietly, letting me have this moment. My phone buzzed once, the screen lighting up with a single email. David Elston. Subject: proposal ready. But first, there was something older I needed to face. Across the street, a car slowed. Paparazzi, I guessed. I'd seen the headlines. Clarissa Morris, face pinched and pale, flashing across news banners. Heir apparent accused, deals collapse, corporate contracts withdrawn. Her social accounts, once filled with filtered perfection, now swarmed by strangers demanding answers she could no longer give. The silence was final. I pressed the envelope to my chest, breathing in the quiet, and finally broke the seal. To my youngest, my warrior in silence. You didn't fight for glory. You fought because you remembered me as I was. That's love. That's legacy. I didn't cry. Not this time. I sat with her words, let them settle into every part of me that had once ached for approval. I folded the letter, pressed it to my lips, and tucked it back with a handkerchief. A memory surfaced. Winter spent at the edge of family gatherings, listening to Clarissa's laughter from the next room, washing dishes alone, waiting for someone to notice I was missing. Even then, I'd wondered what it would take to feel seen. Now, on this porch, I realized I was never truly invisible. I just needed to open my own door. Romy stepped onto the porch, barefoot, carrying 2 glasses of sweet tea. She sat beside me, handed one over, and for a while we said nothing. There was nothing left to prove. The jasmine's fragrance drifted in on the breeze, and I let the memory of Mom watering her plants, humming off-key, fill the empty spaces. The sky glowed amber as the sun dipped lower. A little girl on a pink bicycle sped by on the sidewalk, grinning, ponytail swinging. "Hi, Ms. Morris," she called, waving. For the first time, I smiled and waved back, letting the title settle in my bones, not as a weight, but as an honor. Romy turned, her voice quiet. "If you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be?" I watched the breeze move through the jasmine. I'd tell her to stop waiting for their applause. The quiet is where you find yourself. Romy nodded, squeezing my hand. "You found your voice in the quiet, Dell. That's rarer than any victory." When Romy returned inside to answer a call, I wandered to the garden, watering the stubborn old jasmine that refused to die. I crouched and whispered, "We're still here," tracing the petals with my fingertips. Back on the porch, I opened a fresh journal, the first blank page glaring up at me. I wrote, "The Evelyn Morris Foundation, for the unheard." My hand didn't shake. After a long while, Romy came back out, placed a folded note on the table, and disappeared inside. I sipped my tea, savoring the peace. I picked up her note. "You didn't break. You bloomed." As dusk stretched across the yard, my laptop chimed again. I sat at the old kitchen table, window open, the world quiet except for the distant song of crickets and the piano melody playing softly from my mother's record collection. I opened David's email. "Proposal ready. Funding approved. Let's build this in your name, not theirs." The glow of the screen bathed my face. For the first time, there was no shadow left. I glanced at the family photo on the mantel. Mom, arms around me, both of us laughing, long before legacy became a battlefield. I touched the frame, not as a daughter trying to earn her place, but as a woman who had finally found her own. I closed the laptop, let the piano play on, and stepped into the twilight, barefoot, free. I stopped fighting, and I started building. After all the storms, I sit here in peace, not because others finally recognized my worth, but because I found it for myself. My dignity, my voice, and my mother's memory remain untouched, and no one can take them away again. What I've learned is simple. In the end, truth and courage always outlast lies and greed. When you stand up for yourself, you don't just reclaim your story, you set things right for everyone who's ever been silenced. Have you ever been forced to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for your own truth? Share your story or your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might be the encouragement someone else needs right now. If you believe stories like these deserve to be told, follow the channel and stay tuned for more journeys of strength, justice, and hope.